Hello and welcome into the Touchdown NFL podcast, our week one pod. Week one's almost over. We won't say in the books just yet because we are recording on a Monday night. By the time you're hearing this, it will be over. We'll have got the Bills-Jets game result, and obviously we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But I'm welcome you all in. I'm joined by Tom Willoughby and also Tay Babu as well. So guys, how are we both? 2 out of 3 ain't bad, I guess, for our team's results. Obviously, I'm the one on the losing side of this one, unfortunately, but Tabe, we'll start with you, mate, because obviously you've had like the biggest weekend, the biggest result of the weekend.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's probably the biggest result the Lions have had like away from home ever. Certainly, I think in the 21st century, I don't think they probably had a bigger away win. That was unbelievable. It wasn't the cleanest game, like but it never is going to be, particularly in week one with so many players. Like the Lions' offense basically just didn't play a single snap in preseason. I think Jahmyr Gibbs and Sam Laporta did because they were rookies, but the kind of starters that are coming back from last year, none of them played a single snap at all in preseason. So it's going to take time, not really for all these teams, because nobody really plays in the preseason anymore. But it was just an amazing win. Unbelievable feeling. It was mad to think like they were kind of approximately around 10 or 11,000 Lions fans in Arrowhead Stadium, which is kind of like that's like Chiefs Nirvana. It's a sea of red every single home game for Kansas City, particularly on a night where they're celebrating the Super Bowl triumph of last season. So it was just an unbelievable night, and somehow they managed to do it. They needed a little bit of luck. You're going to need a little bit of luck when you play Kansas City. That's just the nature of the beast in terms of that. But yeah, like getting a road win, now they've had 10 days to recover and they take on kind of a wounded Seattle team. It was unbelievable, just an unbelievable night. Couldn't even envisage it in my wildest dreams that they could win on the road in Kansas City like that as well. Like not letting Kansas City convert at all on third down in the second half was again some effort from a defense that last year was just kind of so poor, particularly at the start of the season. So unbelievable effort from the Lions, and like what a way to kickstart a season.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we'll get into that. Obviously, we just obviously without kind of spoiling everything as we kind of get into the new sort of segments that we're going to do the podcast on. We got games of the week coming up. Obviously, it's going to feature. Don't think I'm really giving a big spoiler away by saying that, to be honest with you. But yeah, like I say, and obviously Willow obviously coming out on top in a divisional matchup where I just think, like I say, I said last week, I think it's going to be the two best teams in the NFC South, and obviously the Falcons come out on top and fairly comfortably in the end.
Yeah, that's the first time the Atlanta Falcons they've had a winning record since the 1st of January 2018. So it's been a long time coming for just any win of meaning. And I didn't see any of it. I was double booked. I saw Busted at the O2 last night, reliving my 10-year-old years. And I had the great idea that I was going to avoid the scores, avoid it completely, and bring it up on Game Pass on the coach home, because I knew it was going to be a longish coach home. I was going to watch the game on the back and avoid it completely, and I did really well. Gig finished about 10:15, and then just instinctively opened my phone and checked fantasy to see Drake London on 0 points. So yeah, I watched the highlights. They look fine. But yeah, it's nice. It's nice to win, and unfortunately, I'm now in the quandary where can I watch any more games? Am I the jinx? Is that the situation? We'll find out when we get slapped, I suppose, at the weekend. But yeah, it's nice to win. It's just nice to win. But yeah.
Hopefully, I'll be joining you guys in the winner's circle next week when the Chargers play the Tennessee Titans. But yeah, there's a lot going on. Like I say, a lot of messy football. We were talking just before we got on. A lot of messy football, as Tayyip kind of said, going back to his point. It's kind of obvious that these guys don't play in preseason anymore. There's lots of turnovers, especially in the other games. And early on, it wasn't as high scoring. The Bengals in particular, obviously getting off to quite a slow start all the way through the game. But yeah, we've got a lot to talk about, and we'll kind of talk about turnovers as things go on, I'm sure. But yeah, how we're going to kind of work this throughout the season is this our in-season kind of schedule now. We're going to work through a few segments. We've got, just going to start off with in a moment with our biggest takeaways and talking points of the weekend, a little bit of a roundtable. We're going to try and avoid the kind of monotonous preview, going through every single game, because just some of them, shout out Arizona and Washington, just not really worth talking about, especially in a preview. So what's the point in kind of boring you guys with all of that? We're then going to talk about the games of the week. So we are going to talk about the highlights. We've not been very creative there's two out of the three of us who've gone for our game that we watched of our team. And then we're going to kind of have some fun and relate some happenings or some previous things out, to some funny moments, to a meme or a gif, or where new ones are going to be born in that sort of sense. Then we're going to kind of finish it off, as I kind of alluded to last week when I was on with Willow. We're going to look at Monday Night Football, make some predictions of which, by the time you have heard this podcast, they will have already come true or not, as the case will probably most likely be. We're going to kind of work up some point system for that, and then we're going to close it out. So yeah, hopefully we've got a good pod ahead for you guys, and we'll dive straight in. So biggest takeaway from the weekend. Hey, but you've got a lot to say, and you're staying in the NFC North with your takeaway here. What is your biggest takeaway from week one of the weekend?
Biggest takeaway was just how concerning and how similar the Chicago Bears looked to last year's version of the Chicago Bears. Like, I watched that game. Obviously, it was in the late window. Again, like, the offensive line really couldn't protect Justin Fields at any point during the game, especially in the first half. Green Bay really got after him. The run defense was porous. Aaron Jones kind of ran all over them. Jordan Love and the Packers offense wasn't like amazing, but they kind of didn't have to be. Like, inside handoff runs, like, they blocked really well. The screen game worked really well for them. Aaron Jones had a field day, and I just thought it looked, the whole thing with the Bears, like, in the last few years, is they're really bad at the line of scrimmage. Like, they don't protect the quarterback very well, and then they don't rush the passer very well or stop the run. And when you've got both of those things happening at the same time, you're just not going to win a lot of football games. And the mad thing is, like, it wasn't one of those areas that they seem to strengthen a ton. Like, they got Yannick Ngakoue, but he's like a specialist third down pass rusher. Like, you're only going to bring him in kind of obvious passing situations. And they didn't really get Green Bay into a lot of those situations. And then offensively, they had so many penalties, so many errors. Chase Claypool looked, Kyle Brandt said it this morning, Chase Claypool looked like he just didn't want to be out there whatsoever. And he was plagued by a drop or two as well. And again, Justin Fields, he just looks like, I still think in the NFL, you've got to win from within the pocket. Like, the great things that, like, Mahomes and Allen can do when they scramble, like, is great, but I think that's like the icing on the cake type of thing. I still think you've got to be really good from within the pocket, and Justin Fields, like, maybe he hasn't had an opportunity to because the offensive line is so bad. But again, he just looked inconsistent. Another really ugly interception was thrown in the middle of the field where he was just really late on it. Like, he just never saw the Packers defender drop down into that coverage. He did the same last year when he threw an interception to Aiden Hutchinson on a sideline. He just never saw him. Like, it was kind of the same thing, and I felt like I've watched this so often. Like, the offense has got so many penalties that they keep going backwards. They can't run the ball, which means, like, they always end up in obvious passing situations, which means it's ready, set, go for any defensive line, and then the offensive line just can't block anybody. So, like, you've got kind of a massive mix of, like, just everything going wrong at the same time, and it feels more of the same. And it's sad in some ways because I think Justin Fields is an electric talent, but, like, it's in year 3, and it feels like, a friend of mine told me earlier, like, he's an idea. Like, the idea of Justin Fields potentially being like an all-pro quarterback is a lot better than what you've actually seen, because nothing seems to work around him. Like, there's no kind of, like, the best offenses, they play in rhythm, or the really good offenses, they don't. Like, it's kind of, it might be a big play to DJ Moore, there might be a scramble that he makes when the pressure's got to him, or he gets sacked and the offense just continues to go backwards. And it's kind of, it's concerning. Like, with my Lions hat on, it's probably not that concerning. It was kind of hilarious, but it was just kind of startling to see just how similar it was. Normally, you see, like, even teams that have kept, like, the same coaches and a lot of similar players, they kind of evolve or they improve at certain areas. The Bears basically just, like, it was almost like watching, like, a replay of a game from last season, which I think would be the more kind of worrying thing, because you've had 6-7 weeks plus the rest of the offseason to work it out, try and put your best foot forward, and they just really didn't whatsoever. Ultimately, the 20 points that they scored flattered them. That's kind of how bad it was, because by the end, the Packers really weren't playing, because they already got to 38 and they just didn't have to kind of thing with it. So that's just kind of my big concern with that, is, again, like, they're just so bad defensively and offensively at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, like you said, they didn't really make an investment. And, we look at teams who we often say, like, win the offseason and things like that. The Eagles this season, they're built through both lines, and that's the way to build your team. That's the best strategy, in my opinion, to build a good offensive line and then to build a good defensive line so you can rush the passer and you can impose your will. And the Bears just haven't done that. I was watching the action yesterday at a friend's house. We had a few friends around, and one of the lads was a Bears fan. And I was with some Dolphins fans, obviously watching the Chargers-Dolphins game on the main TV, and then one of the lads who's a Bears fan had it on an iPad. There was not a lot of positivity raining from that corner, so I can completely see where you're coming from. And
Well,
not really watched this game.
Yeah, I saw on Pro Football Focus, they gave up, that offensive line gave up the most pressures of yesterday. They gave up 25. I think at one point, on 4 of their opening 7 drives offensively, they had penalties which backed them up basically behind the sticks. Add all that, and you just you're not going to go anywhere in the NFL. Look at the 2 teams that were in the Super Bowl. They had really good offensive lines, and they had Chris Jones on a defensive line in Kansas City, and Philadelphia's defensive line is full of really good players. The Bears just don't have, and you're just not even giving yourself a chance. So, unless they kind of can improve quickly, they have what they have. They didn't really add a blue chipper on either side of the of the line of scrimmage. That's kind of where they're going to be, I think, all season.
Can you see there being progression from Justin Fields, or is it going to stay as this idea, this theory?
I hope so. Because, I'm not one of those people. I try and kind of say to myself, these are young dudes trying to make their way in. I'm never going to be one of those people. And you see a lot of these Twitter draft analysts say, "Well, this guy can't play in the NFL, and this guy's so." I try and not be that. I hope he does, because I ain't got an axe to grind against Justin Fields. I just think at what point and Bears fans have already started kind of a little bit kind of turning on him, saying, "Well, listen, it's year 3. You shouldn't be making some of those sloppy throws from the pocket when you do make them." But I don't know. It's difficult when you think you're going to get hit more often than not. No quarterback, no matter how tough and how big and how strong they may be, let's be honest, getting hit by a 300-pound lineman isn't very fun. You know what I mean? It doesn't sound like anybody, it's nobody's idea of fun. Anthony Richardson took one yesterday, and he's a big unit himself, and he was hurt. So as I said, I just think he's walked into a really bad situation, and it probably hasn't gotten better. And I think a bit what other young quarterbacks, someone like a Darnold or someone like these guys, but they've just not developed. He's probably a similar player to what he was when he was first drafted, and that's probably more on the Bears than him. I hope he gets better, because he's such an electrifying talent to watch. But I start to doubt whether or not, and obviously the Bears got picks for next year as well. I just, part of me, and my gut says it might not just work out for him in Chicago, which is sad to say, because again, comes across as a good guy, superstar potentially in the making. But I'm just not sure. I just don't see enough consistently to be sure that he's going to be your guy.
Well, from an outsider's point of view, someone obviously takes interest in the NFC with your obviously Falcons fandom. How do you kind of see the Bears and see this kind of shaking out in terms of their season and kind of how this result shakes and makes their season start?
Yeah, I've gotten into the habit for the last, I'd say, 5+ years of just referring to week 1 as preseason week 4, based purely on, we talked about it before the show, the amount of players that don't really sort of play that much. From the team that I support, played their starting offense for 1 drive across 3 games. I don't know how that translates across the NFL, but you always get these weird results. Not saying that the Panthers beating the Packers beating the Bears is a weird result, because it happens twice a year every year. But you do get these sort of performances in the first week that do make you start to doubt what you're seeing and whether you were just justified in the hype that you had to certain players. And I'm quite bullish on Justin Fields. He was somebody that I was sort of really high on when he in that particular draft. But the Bears are just in a bit of a situation where, like you say, they haven't kind of really gotten better over the off season. The addition of DJ Moore was what we thought was going to sort of kickstart their offense from an explosive point of view. We need to see more. There will be a point where the excuses you kind of run out of excuses, and then you have to start looking at the players that you have. The Bears as an organization aren't really in a great situation and haven't been for a long time. That's obviously not going to be helpful for any player's development, but I agree with Tyve in that it felt not startling. It certainly felt like a well, hang on, what are you kind of thing. It was that sort of performance rather than I think what we all wanted to see, which was some sort of step forward, some sort of tangible evidence that everybody is on the same page and everybody is moving forward, and there might be something, and they might still be something. There's still loads of games left to play, but you lose one game and then all of a sudden the seat's on fire kind of thing. But yeah, it does feel, as an outsider looking in, like this is kind of it for Justin Fields for his. I mean, it's not necessarily make or break, but if we don't see something in the next few weeks, we might be having a very similar conversation about what they might be doing in the spring, kind of thing.
Interesting thoughts, because obviously they don't have a great deal of picks to go and get that. You know, they have got the picks to go up and get someone. So if they make that decision, we've been talking about Arizona in this position where they might have 2 top 5 picks and Kyler Murray. Actually, might be Chicago in that position as well, where they've got picks and also Justin Fields to trade away potentially. So it's an interesting one that we need to keep our eyes on over the next few weeks, how that develops, because that is an interesting storyline and an interesting player. I don't really, like you said, Tayyip, I don't really see too many people rooting against him. I think everyone wants him to succeed. Everyone can see that he has got all the tools to be a good player, but sometimes it's just a landing spot on the system and the environment that you're in that just isn't conducive to you being a top level player in that city, in that team, or whatever it is. So yeah, definitely one worth keeping an eye on. I'll kick off with my biggest takeaway then, and this is something that actually really surprised me. One of the later results, and this was one that I definitely had going the other way. And my biggest takeaway is that Sean McVay is still an elite play caller, even without offensive players who are stars. And obviously, we know he's easily an offensive play caller, but when the Rams have been going all in, getting all these players, signing all the free agents, giving away all the picks, it's kind of always been stars that he's had. But he can do it without, Cooper Kupp obviously gone on to IR. He's going to miss the first 4 games. And it's been kind of talked about widely, the fact that, when you go onto the depth chart of the Rams, you can see how green it is, how many young players they've got. And I felt almost like half jokingly said that the Rams are pretty much just Sean McVay, Matt Stafford, Cooper Kupp before he was injured, and Aaron Donald. That is their roster. Turns out I don't know a thing, because they go in with a big divisional game to open up the season, and they win by 17 points against the Seattle team, who pretty much everyone, myself included, had as I've got them as like a wild card team for sure. I think the Niners are pretty much head and shoulders above the rest of this division. But I had Seattle as quite not too far behind, and like I said, definitely in the top 7 in the NFC. And the Rams have, won by 17 points in Seattle. So it's quite a big result. Maybe it puts down to a bit of week 1 weirdness, as we kind of said. Willow, as you mentioned, it's kind of preseason week 4. But this isn't like a little squeaky result. This isn't a result where there's been lots of turnovers or something like that. Like, the Rams have put up quite a lot of offense. They've done it without Cooper Kupp. And I just really got to take my hat off to him, because, Tutu Atwell, pretty much a gadget guy, 6 catches, 119 yards. Puka Nacua, who, by all accounts, Sean McVay is absolutely infatuated with, and I've written about this in my winners and losers column that's coming out tomorrow on the Touchdown. So, if you want to read more about this, go and get that when that drops tomorrow. But Puka Nacua, 10 catches, 119 yards. It's like, what do I need Cooper Kupp for when I've got this mid-round rookie that I've got out of BYU? The guy is obviously, I think personally, after listening to a few things and reading a few things about him in the offseason, he's trying to find himself again, trying to kind of rediscover his love for the game. And I feel like he's trying to do that through young players and kind of finding that love for teaching and coaching again, that he kind of lost when he became a bit too obsessed with trying to be perfect and find the right answer, which is kind of the sort of thing he's been talking about. He's got a little pet project in Puka Nacua, maybe a couple of other offensive players, and he's going to make this work. And I think actually the Rams, and this again might be being a bit overreactionary to just one result, but I feel like the Rams, through their dominant display here, maybe I've got them wrong and they're going to have a better season than I thought, because I thought they were going to be pretty shit, if I'm going to be perfectly honest with you guys.
Yeah. I mean, just to sort of touch on Sean McVay as a whole, it's not like he's just had exceptional talent. he had Todd Gurley in his prime, and he had Jared Goff when he was playing really well. He's had some really good players in the past. Like you said, trying to find that sort of love of coaching again. It's not like he's had superstars forever. Like I remember him winning games with John Walford, who I'm pretty certain had just done a internship with FedEx or something. Like he still had a LinkedIn profile up or something like that at the time. Anyway, it's kind of one of those things where the Rams don't have capital kind of moving forward. We've talked a lot about how the Rams have just kind of tried to effectively sold their future for a Super Bowl ring, and it worked. They're now in that area where they've got to wait until the picks reset themselves. So if they're going to remain competitive, they've got to make these later round picks, mid round picks, sort of guys that you've not really heard of work and be productive, so that when you do have those picks again, you can complement quite nicely. And this sort of result is really surprising to me as somebody who thought he might retire mid-season. I hope it's indicative of the way the Rams are going to be this season, because when they are good, they are fun. And Sean McVay is just a very fun. His offenses are always so fun to watch, and he obviously he's a genius. Bezos doesn't come to your door if you don't have something. I agree. He's one of those. He's one of the three, I think, at the top. It's him. It's Kyle Shanahan, and it's Andy Reid. The top three for me, offensive minds in the league when they want to make something happen. Didn't work last season. Everything conspired against them. But if this is what it's going to be for the rest of the season, I think we're going to have a lot of fun talking about them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I think the big thing with them is they've still got Aaron Donald and they've still got Matthew Stafford. If those two are healthy, like I'm biased, obviously. I saw every throw of Stafford's career for 12 years, and obviously at 35, and he's had season-ending hip injuries, season-ending back injuries. It's kind of scary to think about how many undiagnosed concussions he's probably had in his career, particularly in the early days. Don't forget, obviously the Tua thing kind of glossed over the fact that he had 2 concussions in the space of 3 weeks last season as well. So I think with Stafford, though, the arm still looked good. It still looked fine. They kept him upright. I think, talking about pressures, Seattle had 5 pressures all game, which when you think that the Rams' offensive line was appalling last season, every time you look, Stafford was basically being beaten from pillar to post. If they can do that, then I think they've got a chance, because it allows Sean McVay and the rest of that offense to flourish. You look at McVay's time in LA, whenever the offensive lines played poorly, it's kind of not really mattered who's played a quarterback, because last year Stafford got beaten to hell because the offensive line couldn't protect him. The year after the Super Bowl, when they went with Goff, the offensive line again fell off a little bit of a cliff, and again Goff struggled behind, if they can keep him upright, I still think his arm's fine. I think he could be 83, and I feel like he's still going to be able to throw that fastball that he's done for so long. That'll be the last thing that ever goes. And I think what you said about McVay, I read this in Sports Illustrated earlier. He's found a new energy coaching these new guys, these young guys. The Super Bowl chase, which I can kind of get, because they were knocking on the door for so long, and you see it in other sports where teams are they're knocking on the door, and they finally get there, and kind of you've climbed your Everest, what's next? And there was so much talk that a lot of those guys might walk away, and obviously Von Miller left, OBJ left, and it was kind of how do we kind of refine that spark? But I think a lot of people that have been around McVay said it's he's back to coaching what he was when he first walked through the door in 2017 with the Rams. And he had that kind of infectious energy that got that young team at the time kind of clicking in the right direction. So it's probably too early to say they're back. And I think the 49ers are a level above. And even in the Shanahan-McVay era, the 49ers have dominated that rivalry anyways, that divisional head-to-head. So although Rams did win the big one in the NFC Championship a few years ago. But I think for as long as they can keep Stafford upright, Sean McVay is always going to have an answer on offense, irrespective of if he's got Cooper Kupp or not. It's not like they had loads of superstars out there yesterday, and yet they found a way. And I've got to give a shout out to Raheem Morris, because I think at one point it was something ridiculous where, in the fourth quarter, Seattle had 3 positive yards of offense in the second half, and this was midway through the fourth quarter. Which again, when you think they've got Aaron Donald and a lot of young players, that's some going, considering you've got DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith and Jigba and Kenneth Walker and a kind of what looks on paper a high-powered offense. That's some defensive performance. So I think, as I said, it's reason to be positive. I thought they'd struggle this year too, just because I thought they couldn't protect Stafford. And if he's getting beaten up again, I worry about how much he's got left in the tank physically, because he's basically been beaten up for 14 years outside of the Super Bowl year. But if they can keep doing that, then I think they'll have a chance. As I said, I think McVay is always going to have an answer offensively, or some different wrinkle or some twist to force teams to kind of find different ways. Like Puka Nacua, he was exceptional. He basically looked like Cooper Kupp, and that was his first ever NFL game. He played the Cooper Kupp role brilliantly. Stafford looked for him whenever he could, and he's already got that relationship with a veteran quarterback, and that's after week 1. So that's a positive sign. As I said, I don't know about if they're back fully to what they were, but I think the NFC's better when the Rams are good, because at least then you feel like the Rams 49ers rivalry in that division is so fun to watch. It has been for so long, because you get so many stories out of comparing McVay and Shanahan. So I hope that the Rams are better than what they were last season, and they kind of hang around on the cusp of a wild card spot.
All right, so we've talked about 2 kind of winners there. Will, you're going to bring us almost like a winner who lost, I guess, in your big takeaway by the sounds of it.
Yeah, crushing back down to earth. The Patriots are still good, guys. I can't believe it. They played a really good Philadelphia Eagles team yesterday, and they hung in. I know it's at home. Again, it was week 1 and all that week 1 weirdness and what have you. But that Philadelphia Eagles team isn't to be sniffed at. That's a really good side. And considering, I think I do feel as if a lot of people were down on the Patriots, more down than we probably should be, given the breadth of history that we have to draw upon with them. I thought they more than held their own. The fact that they had the ball at the end and had the opportunity to win it suggests that they are going to be certainly more competitive than I think people are sort of giving them credit for. The key thing with them is always going to be they're going to be defensively sound. I know sort of 25 points is not an exceptional amount of points to sort of concede. No, you're not turning around going, we only conceded 25 points, but the offense that the Eagles have, that's they are going to score significantly more than that in multiple games this season. And I thought the Patriots handled them really well. Sort of a 4th down stop at the end. As well to get the ball back and give themselves a chance. But I think most importantly is going to be the progression or the development of Mac Jones. Obviously, they're in I'm not saying it's make or break for Mac Jones, but it's very much feels like it's got to work. Otherwise, they're going to look out. If anybody's going to cut loose after 3 seasons, it's going to be the Patriots. And it has. They brought in Bill O'Brien, who obviously worked with them at college level. I think Bill O'Brien's obviously got NFL coaching to varying degrees of success history. He's going to know how to get something out of this quarterback. He's going to know how to get something out of very little. I thought Henry looked really good. Thought there was I think the biggest compliment I can pay to the Patriots offense is Tony Romo referred to a game that they were losing as Mac Jones proving people wrong. Again, the Eagles' defense is exceptional. You touched on it. Their defensive line is just stacked, and they just keep adding so much talent, mainly from Georgia. They just keep adding so much talent to it to keep it up. And they hung in there. They didn't get it done. They came close to getting it done. The game was. I couldn't call it as I'm sat in between Hillingdon and Luckner, sort of watching it on Red Zone, I couldn't call which way it's going to go. And I think that's probably the biggest compliment I can pay to a team that we didn't really have particularly high expectations of. We probably should, again, given who they are. Now, I'm not for a second saying they're going to go out and win the division. I'm not going to go out and say that this is them. They're back fully, and they're going to sort of run the table for the rest of the season. But they're going to get they're going to take some names. They're going to sort of pick up some big wins, and I think they're probably going to be in the conversation right until the final week of the season in terms of a playoff spot. They might well decide where the division goes, be it themselves or one of the other exceptionally talented teams in their division. But they're good. They're a good team. They're going to be much better, I think, than we probably thought they might be. And I don't like that because I want them to be over. For once, just be over. But yeah, I was impressed. I was impressed by what I saw. This feels like a good situation for them at the moment.
Yeah, I think this is kind of a bit reminiscent of what I was saying last week's pod, that when we were talking about the Thursday night football game, I was saying that the Lions might come out looking quite well, even with an hour loss. So that didn't happen, as we'll talk about in a minute, because when we talk about our games of the week. But this is kind of the same thing. The Patriots only lost by 5, and the Eagles were expected to kind of walk over them, so it didn't happen. So we're kind of seeing the Patriots in a better light than they would have done. And I think so. This division is just going to be a joke, isn't it? Like you say, the Patriots, I thought, would just be good defensively and a bit of a joke on offense. Maybe not a bit of a joke. Maybe that's a bit harsh because that's what they were last year. Maybe kind of below average on offense and amazing on defense. But it seems like they had a lot. In terms of the counting stats and the kind of the basic stats, they had the better of this game. They had more yards both on the ground and in the air. And I think they had more sacks. So, they had a lot of the very basic stats that people look at, at a glance to say, oh, who should have won this game? And they all point to the Patriots, even though, the talent level is not there. And that's probably what got them over the Eagles over the hump in the end, the fact that they've just got a better team than the Patriots at this moment in time.
Yeah, do you know what it is? The one thing I'll say about Belichick, I feel like you see all these high-powered offenses in the AFC. He's the kind of grumpy curmudgeon that'll be like, do you know what? I'm going to stop the lot of you. I just feel like that might give them. Talk about looking for a spark. Everyone's talking about Miami and everyone's talking about Cincinnati and Buffalo and the Jet. The offenses in the AFC on paper are ridiculous. Do you know what I mean? It's so deep and you can go through so many. Jacksonville really good offensively. The Chargers will be good offensively. Kansas City are good offensively. You've got so. I just feel like Belichick's just maybe have that chip on his shoulder of, I'm going to stop the lot of you. I just feel like he's that type of guy, and you wouldn't put it past him. They kind of shot themselves in the foot. I was watching it on Red Zone while the Packers Bears game was on, and they shot themselves in the foot early on with some bad fundamental plays. And there was a bad interception that Mac Jones threw off his back foot, and he just threw too high, came off the Patriots player's hand into Darius Slayer's hands. So they kind of put themselves in a little, but then once they kind of got over those errors, they played pretty well by all accounts. I just feel like Belichick, if there's anyone you're going to back to have an answer, it's going to be him. It's whether or not the offense is going to have enough firepower to hang in, if they ever get involved in kind of a big shootout. And I suppose the other thing, the thing with the Patriots this season is, Robert Kraft said in July, he's not happy that they haven't won a playoff game since before COVID times, which is now, as historians look back, we'll be talking about this pandemic as one of the most bizarre periods of our time. But it's a long, long time ago since the Patriots won a playoff game, and he said himself he's not happy about it. So if that's the kind of expectation, then can the Patriots match that? I think they'll be a good team. I think they'll be really difficult to beat, especially in those wintry conditions in Massachusetts. Remember that bizarre wind game against Buffalo a few seasons ago where they just made Josh Allen look silly. They made Buffalo look silly, and Mac Jones threw 2 passes and they won the game. So they're capable of that. It's whether or not they can match what Robert Kraft is obviously expecting and wanting. You win 6 championships in the space of 20 years. You don't want to have that stop. And it's kind of weird now. Teams like Jacksonville are on the rise, where 20 years ago, let's be honest, the Jacksonville Jaguars were a joke. 2 years ago they were a joke, and yet you're seeing these new superpowers kind of rise. And I think if that's the expectation, then that might be where there's some conflict. But I think they'll be difficult to beat as always. And I think they'll take a few names. I agree with Thomas. They will upset a few big, high-powered offenses. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, I mean, just as you were both talking, I was looking at the Chargers schedule, and we play the Patriots in early December. So I guess this is one of these games that you're talking about. So let's kind of chalk that one down straight away. But yeah, like I say, it's going to be a bloodbath in the East there in the AFC. So definitely a division that we'll talk about a lot over the course of the year altogether. So yeah, let's kind of park that one. Some good moments of the week there. Obviously, plenty more that we could have mentioned. If you have got any more that we should have mentioned, then obviously put it down in the comments, and maybe we'll write an article about it or something like that. We'll get together on the podcast or something of that ilk. But yeah, let's move on into our games of the week, where we can dive into the highlights of the week from a sort of wider point of view in terms of the games. I mean, we're going to have to step it up in terms of our originality here, because I'm going to talk about the Chargers game. Tave's going to talk about the Lions game. Well done, Willow. You actually didn't, just pick your team's game. So I think you deserve like some sort of bonus point or something like that straight away.
It was no disrespect though. Like the Chargers Dolphins on paper was really good. Obviously, the Lions game was the first game of the season. Like Thomas could have picked the Atlanta game, but they kind of won pretty easily. Like Panthers weren't very good. I mean, if he wants to change, he can change.
No, I'm not saying he wants to change.
But when you talk about the Atlanta game, they ran the ball like 700 times and they won. It's just like it's not a particularly exciting win, but it's exactly the sort of win that they want to do. So yeah, we'll go with someone else where things happened. Yeah,
Arthur Smith, wet dream by the sounds of it. But anyway, less of that. Let's talk about how the Chargers kind of played against the Dolphins then. So we've got both of this. We've got Willow and myself have both got this game down. I just said it was the game of the week on paper. Maybe the Steelers, the 49ers might have had pre-game might have had a bit of a shot at that as well. But that both turned out to be a bit one-sided as well. Anyway, my thoughts on this as a Chargers fan. First of all, I'm going to preface this by saying I'm going to have to give Miami some credit because they played well. It's kind of obvious. Tyreek Hill, for as much as I don't really like him as a person, torched the defense. Did what he wanted, ran amok, did what he wanted. Tua played very well. I'm still not going to bring up the debate that someone like Sam Acho would want. Sorry, not Sam Acho, Emmanuel Acho would want. I'm not getting involved in that. Muted him on Twitter many years ago. Not getting involved in all that sort of nonsense. And we're not going to talk about any of that here either. But the Dolphins played well. They did what they wanted, like I just say, on offense. They still couldn't stop us on defense. And we'll kind of get into that. But it's a bit of a sucker to be, losing by 2 points when you make silly boneheaded mistakes like JC Jackson did on that drive just before halftime with the PI. Just a few things. I mean, I really enjoyed Kellen Moore in his first game calling the plays. Thought we ran the ball extremely well, over 200 yards on the ground. Austin Eckler, some absolutely great runs. Josh Kelly looks like an actual starting caliber running back, which he's not done thus far in his Chargers career. Through the air, it wasn't all on Justin Herbert's shoulders, which as much as you do have that superstar quarterback, it'd be nice if he didn't have to be Superman every single game. And this looked like this offense is going to be geared to doing that. He still made a couple of really nice throws and did that when he needed to. So, we've still got that in that back pocket. But yeah, the offense looked more balanced. And like I say, it wasn't just going to be kind of stick and like everything really short and just asking Justin Herbert to be Superman, as I said. However, the defense, disastrous. Like literally just couldn't stop a thing. And that was just the story of the game. It was just basketball, wasn't it? It was up one end, up the other. It's not a game sort of style that I really like. I did not enjoy watching the game. And that's not just because we lost. It's not me being salty or anything like that. It's just not the style of football that I like. But yeah, like I say, it was the one who had the ball last and then just didn't give us enough time to kind of reply. It's Hail Mary, not literally Hail Mary time, but you always see late game sacks in this position, don't you, where you have to let the play develop for a little bit longer. And then, you get 2 sacks to end the game. I'll come back to Tua really quickly before handing over to Willow. I thought he played excellent. I thought he was accurate. I thought he was on time. Got the ball out super quick so that, there's no pass rush even available to the Chargers. Super good game from Mike McDaniel as well. Something I again mentioned in my wins and losers call tomorrow on the winner's side. Mike McDaniel having the last laugh. Again, kind of making some odd comments about the Brandon Staley plan in his press conference earlier in the week. Kind of looks like well-placed commentary now, considering that Brandon Staley plan was non-existent on defense. But I'd love to get an outsider's perspective on this. So, Will, you also had it as your game of the week as well. What were your thoughts on the Chargers-Dolphins game?
Yeah, just really fun. I mean, when it comes to, I agree with you. When it comes to the games that I want my team to play, I don't want to be involved in the ones where it's back and forth right up until the very end because it never ends well for my team. And I know who you support the Chargers, so I know it doesn't end well for you guys either. It's just you'd rather have something a little bit more. Just calm down a bit. But when it comes to everything else, this is exactly the sort of game that I want to watch. And it held my attention. As I say, I was on the coach home. I had Red Zone open for a little bit. It got to the point where I had to just flick over, just have this game on kind of permanently because watching football on your phone is very hard. It's especially hard when you've got 2 screens on the same screen and it's just tiny little jewel boxes. So I had to flick it over full time because I was enthralled. And I mean, Speaking of quarterbacks, I'm bullish on. I've tied my tied my flag to Tua early before that particular draft by loudly proclaiming that I thought he'd have the best career of everybody in that class. And unfortunately, I am. Unfortunately, I've got to stick with it. So I'm very pleased to have seen that he threw for 466 yards. Obscene, and the connection that he has with her. I agree with you in relation to Tyreek Hill as a person, as a player. Obviously, very, very good. That shouldn't overshadow everything else. But at the end of the day, we're talking about football rather than everything else, and that sucks. But over 200 yards receiving in a game against a team that I do quite like. I do think they're going to be involved, sort of all the way down. It was just a lot of fun to watch. I don't think it's sustainable for either team. I can't see a scenario where the Dolphins have to do that every single week and it resulting in them winning every single week. Somebody's going to get hurt. As for the Chargers, you're absolutely right. You've got to tighten up sort of defensively. Offensive line seems like it's a little bit of an issue from where I'm sat. You've just given, obviously, Justin Herbert's an exceptional talent. It would help if he was allowed time to allow play to develop without sort of being concerned about who's on his back. But this again, it was just the game that I want to watch to get to go right. And if I was back, this is it. I'm back in, kind of thing. That was the perfect welcome back for me personally.
Yeah, no, I can completely appreciate how the neutral might have felt. I was not feeling very neutral. I was surrounded by a couple of Dolphins fans. And obviously watching my team probably lose as I was going through that game. So, yeah, it was not a great feeling. But, no, like I say, everyone, loves the Rams and the Chiefs game from a couple of years ago. It was the same sort of ilk of game. So I can completely see why that was good. There's a lot of, good offensive play, a lot of good catches, big plays. So it's what everyone kind of wants the NFL to be like, I guess, especially the people who run the league and don't allow defenders to touch anyone, which is a massive shame, but never mind. It's one of those things, though. You're right. It's one thing that the offensive line did really well in the run game, but in the pass protection game, there was way too much pressure. I think Justin Herbert was pressure on 37.5% of his dropbacks, which is just way too high, not sustainable. And you've got to respect, obviously, the Dolphins have got some good pass rushers in Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb, Christian Wilkins, but like I say, it's not sustainable. You've got to have more control. Got to have more control of the game. One thing that harking back to what I said about the Rams controlled the clock against Seattle, who are built to do that. And that's what you got to do. You got to control the clock, and we did that to a degree, but not enough. So yeah, it's back to the drawing board a little bit. Not as worried with the Tennessee Titans coming up on Sunday, but it's one of those things where because you lost your first game, the pressure's on for the second game, isn't it? It's like a little bit like the inverse of what we've got with the Lions. If the Lions lose in their week 2 game, kind of takes away that shine from the Chiefs game, doesn't it? A little bit. We'll kind of come on to that in a moment, I guess. But if they go 2-0 with the Chiefs already played, it's looking rosy. But yeah, that's kind of how I feel. It's almost like must win now. In week 2.
Do you want to hear a really bizarre stat? In the last 3 non-preseason games, the LA Chargers have scored 92 points. They are 0-3 in all 3 of those games.
Not great.
Do you know what it is? It's just insane. Because the thing is, you look at that defense, they got Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa as a star, JC Jackson's really good, Derwin James is still one of the best. I feel like they've got the individual players to be really good. And just for whatever reason, since Brandon Staley's been there, it's never quite clicked fully as how maybe people thought they'd expect. Obviously, he came over from the Rams and they had a really good defense that year, his final year as coordinator there. But it's just kind of mad to think, I don't think this is, some defenses are really bad just because ultimately they just don't have the personnel to cope with some of the high-powered offenses. And listen, I think Miami are going to put a lot of offenses in the blender. But the Chargers do have really good players at all levels of the defense. I don't think, even guys like the interior guys on the defense, they got a lot of really good players. I feel like they should be a lot better. But yeah, that was a real a crazy start. 92 points in it, and just to be it's just, I feel like the talent's all there. It's just not quite clicked for whatever particular reason. I feel like when it does, if it does, the Chargers are going to be right up there. But you know better than me, Lee. But I just feel like as an outsider, I feel like, geez, I'd love to take Derwin James and put him on my team, or take JC Jackson and put him on my team. Like it's one of those where you feel like they're really good players, like really, really good players, top players at their positions. And particularly yesterday, I'll be honest, it felt like, because I watched the game in 40 earlier, it just felt like the Chargers were never going to stop anything on the pass yesterday. And that was kind of the disheartening thing, because as I said, like they've got some really good top defensive players at every level that you can ask for.
Yeah, it's absolutely time to put it together. I mean, just really, really briefly, I think Brandon Staley's in year 3 now. First year, trying to switch from Gus Bradley's system to his system with the bodies that they had just wasn't ever going to work. It needed time. Second year, invested lots of money into getting the players that he wanted. Didn't work. And now he's wanted continuity. We've brought in Eric Kendricks, and that's it. Game 1, small sample size, admittedly, but obviously did not work. So at the end of the day, you got to look at not the personnel, but the person who's running the show, right? And that's why he's on the hot seat. So that's the way I kind of see it, without getting into the weeds of it, I guess.
Yeah.
So, Taib, let's talk about happier things then for you. Your game of the week is the Lions versus the Chiefs. So,
I'm
just take it away.
I'm still in shock that this actually happened. Like, I'm not like texting my cousin, like most of my extended family live in Detroit, hence why I'm a Lions fan. Nobody chooses the Lions out of like personal choice. You got 31 other teams to choose from. Why would you choose the Detroit Lions? I remember this is like 6:30 in the morning. It's like 2 hours after the game's finished. I'm like, dude, this still doesn't feel real. Like, does that actually happen? Like, if the Lions gone in Kansas City and somehow managed to, like, I don't know if smash and grab's the right word, but like burgle a win right away from the hands of, I suppose, Kadarius Toney in this instance, rather than anybody else's hands. But like, yeah, it was just bizarre, particularly because like they started well. Obviously, Dan Campbell, being the lunatic that he is, goes for the fake punt on the second drive of the season. They go down, they score, and then obviously Mahomes does what Mahomes does and goes mad towards the end of the second quarter, towards halftime. They were 3rd and 17. I think 3 plays later they had scored a touchdown, and you're thinking to yourself, 14-7. Kansas City are going to get the ball back. The Lions hung in, but like so many Lions games, like they kind of hung in, but like that's probably the ball game there and then. Like I kind of like 3:30 in the morning, I gave like a sigh of resignation, thinking, maybe it's just a level too far, and that's fair enough. They are the Super Bowl champions for a reason. They got the reigning MVP. They got a coach that's going in the Hall of Fame as soon as he's eligible for it. Like they are a really good team, and then like every other Lions team that's played since like the 1950s would have folded at 14-7. Like every single one of them would have folded and said, you know what, we don't really fancy this today. There's been some Lions players like Sue and Matthew Stafford that would kind of stand up, but we have an English phrase here, like they're Spursy. Like Lions in my entire life have been Spursy, where you think any kind of fault line or any kind of error or any kind of time where things have gone against them, they'll just collapse in like a house of cards, and you just think, yeah, like that's kind of what the Lions do. Like they get so close and then they'll just fall at the final hurdles. And it was bizarre. Like, don't get me wrong, they needed a little bit of luck because Kadarius Toney should have caught that ball. He still would have got lit up by Brian Burns. So when I've had a look at on the all 22, so they might not necessarily have got the first down, but obviously it's gone through his hands. He's had the pick 6. He runs it back for the touchdown, and they're back in the game. And from there, like, it was a new Lions in terms of like just the toughness, the resilience, the stubbornness. Dan Campbell's a lunatic. He is a lunatic. He wakes up at 5 in the morning. He goes to the gym at 6 in the morning. He still trains like he plays, which is why he's basically a behemoth still. Like he is mad, but I think this Lions team, to use another Spurs phrase, he's one of our own. He played for the Lions when like they were really bad. Like the 0-60. I think his 3 seasons in the Lions, they won 4 games across three seasons, and obviously it culminated in the 0-16 season. So he knows what it's like to be on Lions teams that really had no backbone. And this team, like, while they're a flawed team still because they're just still so young, they were the second youngest team last season. Like Jared Goff's arguably one of the most experienced players, and he's 28, and he hasn't even been in the league a long, long time either. And he's one of the most experienced players on the team, so they're still a young team. And so they do make mistakes, and they will make mistakes over the course of a 17-game season. But the toughness and the resilience that they've got is just like unlike any Lions team that I've seen beforehand. Like they got the word grit like scrolled everywhere all over the Lions training facility. This Lions team has that, And I think that's what makes them so tough to play against. You look at over the last, they're 9-2 now. Over the last 11 games, they've beaten Aaron Rodgers twice in that span. They've beaten Kirk Cousins, who made the playoffs. They've beaten the New York Giants, who made the playoffs. They've beaten the New York Jets, who should have made the playoffs. They've beaten the Jacksonville Jaguars. They put 40 on the Jaguars, who again made the second round of the playoffs. Sorry, Lee, for mentioning that one. And now they've beaten the Kansas City Chiefs. So it's not like they've been beating scrubs. And they should have beaten Buffalo on Thanksgiving, to be fair, as well. They kind of had that game in their hands before a ridiculous throw from Josh Allen kind of took it away. So they've been right there, on the cusp of it. It just hasn't quite worked out yet. But as I said, they don't quit. They've got that toughness. They kind of remind me a little bit of the early days before Seattle became a powerhouse. When they were kind of that young underdog, kind of scrappy team in the early part of the last decade. And I think the one thing they've got is they just don't flinch. Like Peyton Manning said on ESPN NFL Live, they just never took a step backwards. Whatever the Chiefs threw at them, they kept coming back. And when they had to close the game out, that touchdown drive when Goff ripped the 3rd and 12, when there's pressure coming from L'Jarius Sneed again, that's a situation where previous years Goff might have folded under it and lost the ball. He's whipped it right into the middle of Josh Reynolds' chest. They move the sticks. They eventually go on and score the touchdown. When it came to close the game, they managed to run all over Kansas City and run for the first down. They had 3 downs to run for 10 yards, and they did it. And again, previous Lions teams wouldn't have done that. So I just think kind of the toughness, the grit that they've got is kind of making them be better than what they probably ought to be, because they're a little bit ahead of schedule. Let's be honest, nobody expected them in Detroit to have a winning season last season. If they went from 3 wins in 2021 to 6 in 2022, that would have been progress. It would have been more than enough progress for 95% of the fan base. So to go from 3 to 9 and suddenly be oh wow, we can actually compete for this division, especially with Rodgers gone, it kind of feels almost insane to say it. And to go there and win, and Hutchinson played like a man possessed. Goff was fine. The rookies looked good. It was just one of those games where the Lions didn't play well. And all my life, every other Lions team would have found a way of losing that game. And this Lions team found a way to get the job done in perhaps the most difficult environment in the NFL. Certainly, the toughest away game I think you can play currently in the NFL. And that the confidence it'll give this young team now is just insane. I'm so excited for Sunday, because I don't think Ford Fields has ever been as loud as what it might be on Sunday, and it just feels like some teams take on identities of their cities. So Pittsburgh, notoriously tough city, Steel City. What are their teams made out of? They're kind of tough, gritty, steely teams. The Lions have always been soft. They've always been flaky. They've always been ultimately a little bit cowardly. If that's not too strong of a word, that's what the Lions have been basically my entire life. They really shouldn't be called Lions. They should be called the Detroit Kitty Cats or something, the word that begins with P and ends in Y, but I'll not use that on here. You know what I mean? So that's what they should have been called for a long, long time. But now they feel like they got that toughness about them, that kind of just, you know what, we're going to come swinging for you as hard as we possibly can. And if you're going to take us out, you better be on your absolute best level, because we're going to give you everything that we've got. And that just comes from the head coach. He just seems to get it. As I said, he's one of those head coaches, I think he'd have failed at every other team if he took another job. If he took a job in Carolina or New Orleans or Miami or wherever, I think he would have failed everywhere else. But he's quintessential Detroit. He just gets the place and he gets what it means to the people. And I think that's why, I've never seen a Lions team is more connected to its fan base than this one. Even if they're not winning, even last year at 1-6, people were no, we still believe in him. We'd run through a brick wall for him. Forget running through one brick wall. We'd run through 10 brick walls. And I feel that's what his team are doing. 15,000 people turned up at Kansas City on Super Bowl banner night. And it's not like it's an easy trip. It's not like going from Wigan to Salford, it's not one of those short trips that you can make. It's a long old trip, and I remember seeing on Twitter there were planes packed with Lions fans all going to Kansas City, and it's just kind of mad to think that they're just riding this wave, this momentum from last season, and they're all just. It's kind of startling to see how all in the same direction everyone is, and I think the belief and also the fact that Minnesota lost, the Bears didn't look very good, and I think the Packers are beatable. They're certainly not what Aaron Rodgers' teams in the past have been. I think just opens the door, and I think like the belief and the momentum could carry this team however far they want to go. I genuinely think the NFC still has 3 teams that are above everybody else, and we saw that yesterday with San Francisco and Dallas in particular. But after that, I don't see why Detroit can't win that division and be that kind of entrenched number 4. Won't be easy, never is. This is the NFL. You lose games that you ought to win, and you win games that sometimes you ought to have lost. But I just feel like they've got something, and I think in Dan Campbell, as I said, like, doesn't feel like there's a 53-man team that's ready to run through a brick wall. It feels like an entire city's ready to run through a brick wall for him. And that's kind of nuts to think in a city, in a team that's been so divided in historically as the Lions. So it's kind of, it's amazing to see. But, now the pressure's on because you're expected to win games. And that's a different pressure for a young team, again, like where since he's been here, the Lions have been underdogs in almost every game they've played. Suddenly they're like 6 points favourites against Seattle, and that's a different pressure, especially because Seattle beat us last season. So like that's a different pressure to deal with. But I feel like they've got the right people to kind of manage the expectations around them. So I think like it was just an unbelievable night. I'm still on a high about it now.
I can tell, mate, you've just gone on an epic monologue there.
You know what I mean? Like I don't even know what I've said. Like it's just nuts. As I said, like just an unbelievable night because really, like nobody's like you don't crash that kind of party. We were just like, the circus clowns invited to look silly while Mahomes did Mahomes things. And that's what we're supposed to be. Like they could have put the Bengals there, the Chargers there, or the Eagles in that game, and they chose the Lions. Let's be honest, because as Dan Campbell said way back in May, they put us there so that like we can get humiliated. And he had 5 months basically to drill that into his team, and they delivered ultimately.
Absolutely. Yeah, I said it on the Plays I Like piece that I did over the weekend. Also available on YouTube, by the way. Go back and watch that while you're here. I thought the Lions put together a lot of drives that just made sense. Kind of what you said a little bit earlier when you were talking about, joined up thinking on offense as the kind of play calls come in. I thought Ben Johnson did a great job of that. And, that kind of led to the win. Like I said, Dan Campbell didn't dress it up, did he? He said it wasn't a clean game. He said it was a messy game on both sides. And I think he was right. And I think that sort of honesty, especially after a win, is going to win him a lot of fans in the locker room. And I don't think he needs to win too many more. Willow, are they for real?
No, I have to say, just before we get into it, I'm delighted because, like, Ty's been doing this for as long as this podcast for as long as I have, and he suffered through some really awful Lions teams, and like, I think it's probably too early to sort of say one way or the other whether they're for real. But I think that the most underrated aspect of where they're at the moment is just when there's more to a rebuild than just stacking up talent. Like I've followed a team that has decided that their version of a rebuild is going to be players that were pretty good 3 years ago in free agency for a lot of money that we don't really have, and anyone can just put together talent with players that don't necessarily get it. But it's one thing to do that, and it doesn't sort of succeed all the time. But if you're starting from, I mean, they stripped it all back. They started from the very beginning, and just sort of brought in players that bought in completely. I've been very critical of Jared Goff for the majority of his career, and I'm still not entirely convinced by him as a long-term option for the Lions. But I think it's very, very clear that he's more than capable of getting this sort of Lions team playing a good brand of football to the point where they can beat the best team in the league. Just to completely sidestep your question, I did want to sort of raise a question myself. That the Chiefs, obviously, as we know, lost, and they've got a pretty tough-looking game this weekend against the Jaguars. The look on you talked about teams starting sort of 0-2. Why does it? I know the answer is because they're the Chiefs and they're the best, but like, why does it feel different that the Chiefs could lose that game and everyone, and myself included, would go, they're fine, they're fine. But like kind of anyone else in that scenario, kind of. Do we have to worry about the Kansas City Chiefs if they lose that game against a good a good-looking Jaguars side, or?
I feel like it's a two-part. I don't think you need to, again, not to kick Lee while he's down. I don't think even if they're 0-2, if they're 0-2, I don't think you need to worry about them winning the division. I still think they'll win the division. I suppose it's when, like, are they going to be as good as what they were to handle Cincinnati or Buffalo or Miami or some of those teams? I think they'll be all right. Weirdly enough, Chris Jones has re-signed for one more year. Like 2 minutes ago, so his holdout is over. I don't know how much he'll play this weekend because he obviously has had no preseason at all. He's just been hanging around.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
Nothing. Me? Just hanging around.
I think they'll be fine. Like there was still enough good there, and I think the defense is pretty good. Like for as much as like we talk about Mahomes and Kelsey, defense is really good. Like they got a lot of young players on that defense, and Spagnuolo's been around for so long, and he's seen it, done it, won it all. Like I think the defense is pretty good. I think they'll be okay. As I said, like it's one of those where like you just feel like they'll win the division, get a home playoff game, and then take it from there. I think they'll be fine. They'll probably win that game on Sunday. I think if Kelsey's back as well, I think they'll be all right.
Yeah, it's one of those. Like I said, it's credit in the bank. And to be honest, you've prefaced it with not keeping miles down. I was going to say something quite similar. To be honest with you, they've got such a high ceiling, and the Chargers are probably, obviously one game that they've lost already. They had a chance to obviously get ahead immediately, and they didn't take that chance. They aren't going to struggle to put together runs. And the run like quite easily could be made, and that could be just like, oh well, they're going to win the division now. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, it comes down to the intra-division games and the close games that the Chargers and the Chiefs usually play. But it could be the case that even if they go 0-2, the Jags are a good team. There's every chance that the Jags can give them a scare, especially if Kelsey's not there as well. And I don't think anyone will bat an eyelid. There's every chance of that.
That's fair.
But it is because they are who they are. They've got the players and the coaches that they've got, and they've got credit in the bank. It's not like I don't know. Trying to think of like another team who might be in that sort of position without the credit in the bank. Really, I mean,
it's like the Jets.
I guess
0-2.
Yeah, that's a really good example.
You would say like, well, they've not been there, so you kind of question. Where like Kansas City, like they've been there for so many years now. You just think they'll figure it out. Even like last year, they started slowly. They lost to the Indianapolis Colts. Not like the Colts were very good, and they figured it out and won a Super Bowl. They lost to Buffalo early last year. Like it can happen. I think they'll be fine. As I said, it's that whole thing of like you've seen it. Like they've done it. They've proven like they can go the distance. Like I wouldn't worry about them whatsoever, really.
Yeah, no, would I? Unfortunately, but it would be nice seeing them get beat by the Jags again. Anyway, let's just move on because there's a lot of great games that have happened this week, and we could have been here forever. And I'm sure Tabe, you could talk about the Lions forever, given that you just got
that was like the Super Bowl. That was like winning the Super Bowl. Like that was my Super Bowl. Like stop the count and everything now. Like I'm happy for the season to end.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we're going to move into the last couple of segments, quicker segments as well. We're going to have like a little bit of fun with this third segment. We've got a little segment that I've made up called Meme or GIF It. And what we're basically going to do is equate something that happened to a meme or a GIF, or kind of be the place where new memes and GIFs are kind of born in this segment, where we kind of see something that happened and kind of say that'll be used later on down the line. There's a few that we've got here. I kind of tossed and turned about a couple of them. There's going to be plenty of ridiculous things happen with these ridiculous people in the NFL, on and off the field as well. Willow, take us through your moment that you want to meme or GIF.
I feel quite bad. I feel quite bad because like so there's a video. There's a short video that I saw about 5:30 of Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers quarterback's room walking out to the field to begin their warm-ups, and he stood walking alongside Andy Dalton, and it just looks like a child being brought to school on their first day. And I've done I had a look before like we came on. Like Bryce Young's like a reasonable height for a human being. Like he's 5'10", and like the average like male height in America is 5'9", so he's an above average height. But for a position where like you have to be 6'3" minimum in order to like be able to see over the people in front of you. It's just something so comical about him stood next to really tall human beings that made me laugh a lot. I feel really bad about it, but there's something so funny about this guy who's not actually that short, looking tiny. Yeah, that's right. That's where I went with it.
And we'll be getting producer Kieran to put these on the screen on the YouTube edit as well, so you'll get to see these. Tabe, yours is like going around Twitter like non-stop.
Yeah, I've seen it all over today. Yeah, apparently it's not the only one either. I imagine Kieran's not going to like this one. Yeah, Miles Garrett showing off his NBA skills at the line of scrimmage while Joe Burrow's going through. Do you know what I mean? While Joe Burrow's going through, like, I don't know how more dismissive you can be of like who your opponent is. You know, like everybody else has got their hand in the dirt. You know, listening to the call, waiting for the snap, ready to go, ready to get out of here like a Cheltenham Gold Cup thoroughbred, and like he's just hanging around as if he's like just at the bar on a Friday, like just with his friends. And then the mad thing is I've seen as well, he had the fastest get off time recorded by any defensive player. So it wasn't like it was slowing him down. And he caused havoc in that game by all accounts. They pressured Burrow a lot. And like just how dismissive of your opponent can you be, and then suddenly you go into that kind of beast mode of just running through your opponents. So yeah, happy days for Miles Garrett. He's such a good player. He's just freak. We don't talk about it a lot because it's Cleveland, but he's just so good. But yeah, how dismissive, and he backed it up, to be fair. So fair play to him.
Yeah, he's in my opinion, he's the best pass rusher in the league. So that's just kind of how I talk about Miles Garrett around, and he can do what he wants in terms of whatever sport he's playing, whatever he wants to do on the football field. But yeah, it was kind of bizarre to see. But yeah, by all accounts, it's not the first time he's done it either as well. So keep your eye out for that one. Miles Garrett, maybe he'll pull out some other sports as well later down the season. You never know. I think he also pulled out the Ronaldo Sue celebration as well, which I could do with less of. But, yeah. My one is actually just from an old meme, really, in the fact that we've all seen the Cowboys fans meme, haven't we, where there's fans of other teams just like stood around having a normal chat, and the Cowboys fans come in and they're talking about them winning the Super Bowl and things like that. The thing is, it actually reminded me that actually this might be coming true, because the Cowboys absolutely destroyed the Giants 40-0, and their defense was just on fire. Special teams on fire as well, returning blocked kicks and all sorts. So yeah, I think they are going to push the Eagles all the way in that division, maybe the 49ers in the NFC as well, along with the Eagles. And their fans liking this meme are going to be insufferable, which is not great for the rest of the league.
even when they're like not to, again, I don't know many Cowboys fans, but I'm online enough. Even when it's just like 1 or 2 wins, it's like, this is our year, and it's like, oh, come on, like. At some point, that's got to get like they're in on the joke themselves, but they did the business. So I mean, you can enjoy it, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you've got any others that we should have shouted out, drop it below the tweet when we tweet out the podcast. For any other memes or gifts that you would have had relating to anything that happened this weekend. Lads, we'll move on into the final segment, and this is where we predict our Monday Night Football predictions, or we make our Monday Night Football predictions, should I say. You can't really predict a prediction, can you? I don't know, unless I'm predicting the segment coming up. Anyway, it's going to be the Bills versus the Jets. As we all know, Aaron Rodgers' his debut in green. Well, I suppose he used to play in green. I'm just going to completely write off this segment. Lads, let's make some predictions. I'm fluffing it all over the place here. Dave, lead us off with your prediction here.
Yeah, I've gone for the Jets 30-21. The Jets defense gave Buffalo real problems last year. I think they kept them below 20 points on both occasions, and that was when they had Zach Wilson playing quarterback. Now they got, for as much as I dislike him, he's ruined my adolescence. Rob Rodgers can play quarterback. I like to think he can after 4 MVPs and a Super Bowl win. He's pretty good at his job. I fancy the Jets, just raucous crowd. New York, that stadium's probably going to be as loud as it's been for a Jets game in a long, long time. Monday Night Football, I just fancy the Jets to get it done.
Yeah, so that's a winning margin of 9 points from the Jets.
Yeah.
I should have mentioned this. I was so keen to take the spotlight off me because I was tripping over my words so much. I wanted to say that the way we're going to score this, we're going to have it as a league table. We want to give a winner and then the point, sort of winning margin. So 1 point for picking the correct winner. So the Jets, for example, Bonus point for the correct winning margin. So if whatever the score, if it's 9 points, they will get a second point. And then we're going to give a second prediction in a moment as well. So say, what's your second prediction in that game?
So my
Your
second prediction was
one.
for Dalvin Cook to rush over 100 yards and get a rushing touchdown in the game.
Awesome. I mean, that would be some debut, wouldn't it, for this new collection of stars that the Jets have collected? Again, you collect a collection. That's what happens.
Yeah.
Willow, come on, let's pull this out. Let's get this over and done with. I'm absolutely dying here.
Yeah.
I got about 4 hours sleep last night.
I'll be honest, I could do with Taves coming true just to sort of counter the lack of points Drake London put up for me yesterday. So that would be nice. I've gone for the Bills to beat the Jets 28-18. I know that Aaron Rodgers is excellent, and I know that there has been a complete turnaround as to what we think of the Jets over the last sort of 4 months. But I don't think there's been that same level against the Bills in that time. Like, the Bills are really good. They're a really good. Josh Allen's really good. They've got some really good receivers. They've got a pretty good defense. They're a pretty good team. And I also thought that everyone would pick the Jets, so I just wanted to be a little bit different. But I genuinely think that there's a little bit too much going in. I know, again, this in terms of a story, Monday Night Football debut at home. It's all kind of set up for an Aaron Rodgers sort of masterclass. A Jets win, and all of a sudden they're back, baby. But there's also part of me that's just kind of like, it would be nice if that was kind of fell sort of flat on its face. And I can't think. I kind of revel in the Schadenfreude of it. That would be really funny. That would be really. I've got no beef with the Jets at all. But that would be really funny to me. So yeah, let's go with the Bills to be the team that they've been for the last 3 years, and to be a team that have not been very good in that stretch of time. Let's be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's two good teams. Bills, like I say, more established, more credit in the bank, harping back to something that we mentioned before. However, that said, I'm going to go for a close one. You guys have got quite a big winning margin for both of you guys, 10 and 9 points. I'm going to go for just a 3-point win for the Jets, taking it 24-27 over the Bills. So yeah, just quite a narrow one. I think these two close match teams. I think the upward trajectory of the Jets is just going to count for something going into week one. Might catch the Bills a little bit cold. And yeah, I think it's going to be a really, really close game. I think both quarterbacks are going to be good. And I think with my second sort of prediction that kind of plays into it, I think Garrett Wilson's going to have over 10 catches in this game. I think he's going to be Aaron Rodgers' number one target, favorite target, new best friend, and he's just going to absolutely pepper him. So yeah, 10 catches, 10 receptions or more for Garrett Wilson is my other prediction. So yeah, we'll see. And obviously by the time this is out, we'll already divvied up the points and the results will be in. So yeah, we just want a good game though, I guess, being the neutrals amongst us. But yeah, that will pretty much do it for us. Really happy to get out of here, to be honest with you, because like I said before, I've had about 4 hours sleep, but a great pod with you guys. Really enjoyed the first in-season pod when I wasn't tripping over my own words. Just a quick thing before we go, to quick one to signpost you guys towards everything we've got coming out over the next few weeks on the Touchdown. Going to have plenty of NFL content, college football content, and also fantasy as well. Tomorrow we'll have winners and losers, which I've mentioned a couple of times throughout the episode. We'll also have 5 things that happened from Willow. And then obviously we've got Rookie Watch and Matchups of the Week. And that'll happen later on in the week from Brian and Joe, respectively. Obviously, Joe getting that win matchups out there. And that also mentioned Myles Garrett as well, as we mentioned before. So yeah, we've got plenty more coming up around the college football scene as well. Obviously, a lot of burning questions. UK and Ireland top 25 from side plays of the week. And everything else that we've got. Plenty to come on Touchdown. Stick with us. But yeah, like I say, let's get out of here, guys. Follow us at the Touchdown NFL on Twitter. But yeah, thanks for sticking with us throughout this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time.